show for part 2. Niamh, Yvonne Cronin, live from Ibiza.
Yes, welcome back, Niamh. So good to have you here.
So good to be here, guys. What an amazing year it's been, and we're back.
Been looking forward to this. It's a year, but it doesn't feel like a year.
Yeah, that's right. It's been such a changing time. I'm a different person. Rob's probably the same. But I've been through some changes, that's for sure.
It's been crazy, but crazy in so many different ways. And where do we even begin?
Well, I think we begin with where we were, right, at episode 43. Yeah. And in the spirit of not over-intellectualizing all of the things that came up, Niamh, what is just singing from your heart at the moment that you want to talk to or about, or what is on your mind?
Oh my gosh, guys. Talk about starting the episode with a loaded question. But I love it, because that's what we're here for, right?
Normally it's Rob that overloads the questions. I'm so sorry.
What?
I love it. But that's what we're here for, right? Big conversations, big questions, and even bigger answers.
Yes.
So I love it. For me right now, and just to speak into after what you just shared, I feel like all of us have come, full circle next level. All of us have gone through so much change. And I guess everyone even listening to this podcast will have as well in the last year. But I feel for me right now, it's all about true liberation. What does that actually mean? And liberating our potential. Liberating our potential at this time, and really understanding and have a direct experience of the capacity we have as natural human beings. And I think we can get a little bit sidetracked and distracted, myself included. We all can, with what's playing out in the world. But I feel like there is the biggest window of opportunity right now for us to realize our potential. And that's what I'm really excited about. Of course, to realize our potential means we need to be with it all too, right? So it's the ultimate self-reflection, self-reflective love, to come face to face with ourselves at this time and to remember who we are.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Because our last episode, which I re-listened to just the other night, we talked about the situation we were in, that humanity was facing. And you came up with this, Niamh, that there was this choice point and this grand splitting. This is exactly what has played out in my life, in my relationship with friends, family, on a global scale, right? And it's like, I felt like, what choice do I make? What path do I want to choose? And I knew instinctively and innately, right from when all this drama happened, it was going to be the natural path, because that's how I've always chosen. I've listened to my heart. I've listened to my inner wisdom, listened to my intuition. I've listened to my body. I spend my life connecting to my body as a vehicle, because it's the vehicle in this reality. And then I listen to the logic, and then I do the research, and then I, go through that process. But I came up with this whole thing of like, how free are we? Like, you talk about liberation now, and yes, that's what they want. I want to be free. I want to choose what I want to do. Don't want these restrictions. I don't want to be told by authority, etc., etc. And that caused a real, you don't want to know. There were parts.
Massive warrior stuff.
Well, my warrior, it was like, what do I do? Where is it? And then you had to pull that back and go, hang on a minute. This is not the right approach, because the drama is all in my own perception and how I respond. And then I can go deeper and deeper and find, as you so beautifully talk about, is to find the wisdom and to find the learning from the challenge that I'm going through.
Niamh, I went through a massive acceptance process, and I can't remember if I talked about it a year ago. And because around that time I thought, I'm done. All this stuff I've accepted, over and done, wrap it up, nice, put it in a box. But no, that process has just gone on and on and on. And when you spoke last time about people making a choice point, and will they go into the AI, or will they go into themselves and connect with Mother Earth and be part of, the full proposition of what it means to be a human? There is so much struggle there for people who were making a decision over whether or not to get a vaccine in this country when you were so coerced that you'd lose your job, and to participate with that reality and potentially that genetic modifying scenario and not be as human or a different version of human than before. And you said, that's okay. Some people are supposed to go on that path. That's what their soul is signed up for. I'm poorly paraphrasing, but that was part of the acceptance process for me. So hard.
The agenda was on steroids, man.
Yeah.
The Matrix was full blown, boom, here I am. That's how I felt it was.
Yeah. What do you think, Niamh? Because I sort of feel like I'm stealing your thunder here, but there was so much that was powerful in what you said. I really have to thank you for it, because people spoke to me who listened to the podcast that you came on here a year ago repeatedly.
Wow. Thank you both so much for sharing all of that. I feel, even for myself, I've been on a journey with it all, and I continue to be, and I think we're always expanding and evolving our awareness as things unfold. What first came to me as you were speaking, Rob, is there's a piece around what freedom really is and our perception of what that looks like. And I feel like the liberation at this time is perhaps in a shift in our perception, because there are those who believe they are free, but in reality, they are imprisoned. There are those who believe they are imprisoned, but in truth, they are actually free. And then there are those who know they are free. And my journey has been about how can I connect to the essence of life within me that is life, that is the essence of what freedom is. Because no matter whether we are moving with the flow of the pendulum or we're moving against it, either way we are feeding it. So either way, in one perspective, you could say we are not free, because we are still entangled in its web. So the biggest piece for me this past year is about liberating my perception. And how can I expand my awareness, my inner awareness, so that I can perceive what is real, so I can perceive reality and no longer perceive my world and what's playing out in the world through a very narrow bandwidth.
Yeah, I was going to say, because perception is key to navigating your reality. Your reality is basically what you perceive reality to be. So if you're perceiving reality, as you say, in a real narrow bandwidth, then that's your version of reality. So what does reality look like when you are truly liberated, truly free? How does that feel? What is that, right? Because you talk about someone who perhaps doesn't know they're free, but in fact they are. And I've always had this, well, I don't know if it's an idea, I suppose it's a perception, that the part of humanity that can be taken over or apprehended is the consciousness. And that's the assault, so that we process everything in our intelligence. But when you're not thinking through the top of your head, you feel, and you can translate so much more when you're swimming in the ocean or you're just connecting with nature, etc. So you're not necessarily intellectualizing it, but we get caught up in the head. It's like the head versus heart scenario. And I think that's where we struggle so much to get that balance, to just to feel alive, man. Like what does it mean to feel alive?
Yeah.
And unless you've had direct experience, that's the only thing you can really take it from.
We are not going to intellectualize our way out of this one.
But the way that they're putting people into fear is done through an intellectual process.
Yeah, through words.
They trap them through fear.
Through casting spells, through repetition.
I mean, we speak to you, Niamh, from the New Zealand paradigm. I assume there are similarities all around the world. I assume there are, but our particular one, and speaking to that genetic divide of the vax versus the unvaxxed, the thing that comes up for me is people's pinch points, what it is that pinches them to go and get the vaccination that they didn't really want, what reality that they are holding on to, that they feel they have to make compromises in themselves, that they have to go and do it because they have to look after their kids, or these are fair points, by the way. This is not to judge, but the things that people will say is, I have to this, I have to pay for this mortgage, I have to maintain this lifestyle. and they will put those things ahead of the integrity of their inner self saying, I didn't want to get it.
Yeah. Plus, I know they were manipulated,
Coerced.
and coerced into making that decision. So that doesn't help.
Yeah.
So you're really starting from there.
Some people were put more so than others between a rock and a hard place.
Different, and everyone has a different threshold to that pinch point.
Yeah.
And we're not judging it. We're just saying that everyone would have come to that decision themselves, but influenced by heavy, I'm just going to say it, propaganda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. I must assume, Niamh, that your trip from Ireland to Ibiza for the time being, I mean, I fantasize that is some kind of great escape World War II story. Like you got the hell out of Dodge. You know? Like what got you running from the law? What exactly happened at your end? Tell us that story.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Can I invite us into something?
Yes, please.
Because as we're talking, I can still feel that we're still very much having this conversation through the realms of the intellect, and we're attempting to understand what's unfolding, and particularly understand what it means to be free and what it means to liberate ourselves. But we're still coming at it through a very narrow perspective or bandwidth, right? And you mentioned, Rob, about, are we in a prison? And this is about us really having a direct experience of our potential, because yes, that may be true that we are becoming imprisoned in a collective hive mind that is fixing our focus on awareness on a singular point of focus. And then, of course, we now have this agenda of singularity, which is the full assimilation into a hybrid mecha, AI technical matrix. But let's have a greater conversation here. Let's expand our awareness beyond the mind and the intellect and expand into the capacity of our feeling and our emotional awareness, and allow ourselves to access a greater source of awareness to translate this from a greater perspective. And when I mean greater perspective, is the capacity as our true nature as a multidimensional being, we have the capacity to translate many different perspectives, many different layers of information, multidirectionally and multidimensionally simultaneously. But that's not possible if our awareness is focused and fixed in the mind. And so this is all coming down to singular point of focus. It's coming to, where is my energy focused? Where is my thoughts? Where is my awareness being fixed? And equally our language. So I'm going to invite us to also be intentional about our language as we explore this dialogue even further, because our language and where we fix our awareness and how we approach this conversation will either bring us into that limited matrix, or it can expand us beyond it to have a greater conversation, because we don't want to play into its matrices, right? But what can happen is, as we have these conversations and as we begin to disclose the truth and as we begin to uncover the truth, our emotions, our thoughts, our words can also act as a way for it to re-imprint and reinforce that matrix. So we're essentially entrapping and engaging ourselves even more within it. So perhaps there is a different way, and a way in which we can really understand what it means to come into our centered point of awareness, to expand into a space beyond it, and to begin to observe our relationship with it. And this, I guess, is where I feel the deeper inner work is, because where there is, if we are in rejection, if we are in resistance, if we are attempting to control it, we are still under its power. Now, the process of liberation will be the journey to reconcile these things and reconcile our relationship with it, so that we can truly operate from a space of what I call be in right relation, which means I can coexist with this system, this matrix, with this blueprint, but I don't need it, or don't need to allow it to limit my expression. And this is a very high level conversation, and this is like a very deep internal untangling and an internal unraveling that takes place in the privacy of your own heart. And that can take as long or as little time as each person needs. And it's a process that unfortunately no one can bring you on. No one can take you through this. But this is like, if we looked at the process of alchemy, this is the ultimate refinement process. It's like the going through the eye. This is the invitation at our time. Can we see limitation in itself as the doorway to the infinite, as the doorway to our potential? And can we embrace the enemy as the catalyst at this time? Just like when we truly understand what a virus is, a strand of RNA is actually a genetic sequence that is designed to instruct the DNA and the cells within your body to evolve, right? So let's just use that metaphor. How can we perceive what's unfolding in our world? And can we see it as an opportunity for evolution, for expansion? Or will we continue to see it as something that is here to limit us? Again, it's perception. It's a shift in perception, and there's no right or wrong. And perhaps the choice here is your choice in how you choose to perceive now what is unfolding. Now, there's a lot that I just shared there, but I'm also very aware that there's also a physiological, emotional, and energetic process that we must go through to shift our awareness from the realms of the mind and the intellect and remember and learn again how to fix it and bring coherence to the heart and the emotional center in the body. And this is, I guess, the work of this time. And this is what I'm empowering people to be able to facilitate within themselves. And I call this inner space, is remembering our capacity to cultivate the inner space and awareness within yourself fully, so that we can truly be the wise warrior at this time and be the full realization of our potential and express and radiate that through our cells, through our DNA. And literally, I read recently that, like, if we were to measure the voltage of the light that can penetrate our mitochondrial DNA when we fully remember how to harness that light and potential, it's the same voltage that is emitted by the rays of the sun, right? Or the same voltage as a bolt of lightning, right? That's like, we're literally a biocomputer. That's essentially what the human body was created to be. And when we can remember how to unlock that naturally, to be able to harness and hold that energy and that capacity and expand our awareness beyond the different, how would you say, what's playing out in our world is like a tiny fragment of what is actually unfolding.
But do you think what's playing out in the world is the catalyst and the opportunity for us, if we perceive it that way and we take that opportunity and we recognize it?
What do you think? What do you feel?
Well, I believe it comes down to the individual and where they're at, and whether they, go with the fear, they go into fear mode and go no, or distraction mode or whatever, or they don't want to use this opportunity for, as you say, self-mastery and growth and expansion and involvement. It comes down to whether you're curious enough and open enough. And I know that you've said this many times when you've spoken, that you say the word that I assert that if you're here, then you're ready, or at least you're curious and you're open. And that in itself is a choice, right?
And to know that we have choice will assert that we have free will.
Yeah. I choose to engage or I choose not to engage. I choose to be empowered or I choose to be fearful. It's that whole paradox, well, not paradox, but duality.
Every day I face a fear point in my life when I go out. And I feel it because people are out there walking around with masks on. And the fear in me is that I have to muster strength for is I'm going to go out without one on. And I make an effort to do that. And at first I had to push myself into a place of tightness and almost push myself out with a bit of anger to have the strength to be brave to do it.
Yeah, you had to
because
prepare
I was
yourself.
overcoming tremendous programming of playing along, of playing ball with society, and the big fear, that primal wound of non-acceptance by others.
Yeah.
Or what would people say about me? Would people say things about me behind my back? Even strangers I don't know in the street or at the shops. And I had to push myself past that. Well, it doesn't matter what they think. And I had to rationally approach to give me a structure and a framework to hold on to do what I knew was right, but which I didn't simply have the freedom of my heart to just do it anyway. I was doing it, but I wasn't doing it from a place of just, I'm going to do this with no thought or concern for fear of doing it. Yeah. I was doing it with fear and feeling the fear and doing it anyway to be trite. But I was doing that. And the daily practice for me is to do that more and more from a completely carefree, abandoned, loving space, more and more. Because at first I had to tighten up and walk into a hardware store and go, I'm ready for this. Whatever they say, I can, I can meet this challenge to coming to a place of, I don't even need to think these thoughts. I'm just going to come in really calm and centered. And I had a couple of profound moments. In one instance, actually, where I was pulled over by a police officer and given a $400 ticket for I'm going to own up to something here, for not having the right license because I was on my scooter and I didn't have the right license for it. And I just went, I just have to trust. This is going to go okay. And I wasn't at all defensive, which wasn't like me at all, because typically I'd be like, hey man, come on, but I just wasn't. And he felt that difference. I know he did. And he said, I've got a $400 fine for you, but if you go and get your license in the next 60 days, just write in and you'll be off the fine. And I was so glad I had a different response, because I felt like in that moment I was working with natural law, because as he approached me and came towards me, I said a little prayer to be the best version of myself, to be the calmest, most relaxed. And it changed things and it worked. And I feel that was a reminder to myself of why I need to practice that heart-centered approach to letting go. And it may not be the best example of where I started from, but it works back into it.
But it's a real experience.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a tangible, real experience that you had. And I wonder how many listeners out there have had similar experiences of feeling what you felt engaging in society and the way society is.
Well, for me now, that I take that experience into the supermarket and smile at everyone I see. Without a mask on. Because I want to feel people's, the connection with people, which this situation has brought disconnection from us because we no longer see people's faces. Niamh, I don't know if I will ever satisfactorily move out of that narrow bandwidth of the mind that you're talking about, but I resonate and absolutely respect what you're saying, and I work towards it.
Oh, I'm so glad you just spoke into that, Steve, because what you just shared is exactly that. In that moment when the police officer came and you consciously chose, you said a prayer, and in your own way, energetically, what happened is you've shifted your focus and awareness out of the mind into your heart to say a prayer with intention. And when we begin to harness this more and more, and we learn the tools how to do this, what ends up happening is you shift into a different vibrational space, so that you therefore begin to take up space in your physical body. Then we become the effect of the atoms and molecules in our environment rather than being the effect of it. So the earlier version of you going out into the world, right? There was this fear, there was this anger, there was this resistance around the mask, right? And about how are you going to approach it? And you were fired up and you were ready for that response. So a system or structure, an entity or a structure, because we're incarnated within it, without us realizing it or not, we have become subject to the will of it, right? And whether we are for it, whether we give energy to it, so whether we're the mask wearers, or whether we're, we're going along with it, or whether we're like resisting it, protesting it, choosing to be defiant, we're actually still subject to its will, and we're still feeding it. Now, what can happen is when we're living and operating from that space, when we choose to fight a system of structure of that magnitude, we can begin to experience life kind of working against us. We can feel, like you were saying, this uphill struggle, like it just becomes tiring all the time. It feels like you're having to put a brave, like strengthen yourself before leaving the house. And that's very real energetically, because a system of this magnitude is wanting to eliminate those, right? So the pendulum is wanting to eliminate those who are in resistance, right? But either way, it's still fueling it. It's still harvesting your energy. You're still entangled in its web. And so there is a practice that we can do which shifts our awareness out of the mind, where it's keeping our focus at this time. All of the technology, all of the control mechanisms are keeping our focus here. And most importantly, it's keeping our focus on what's happening externally. But everything that I'm creating, like at this time, I'm even choosing less and less to speak about these kind of things, and choosing more and more to simply create space and containers for people to come in and remember how to access this state of embodiment within themselves. So rather than having these conversations, I'm creating spaces where we're actually entering into the physical practice, the emotional and energetic processes of what it feels like to liberate ourselves. And so what you did in that moment when you're on your moped is that you experience a tangible, direct experience of a shift in reality, because we are that powerful that once we remember how to harness our own innate power and intelligence, we can shift and alchemize atoms. And like, this is scientific, right? This is a synthesis of science and, right, spirit and matter. We can shift and alter the energy and frequency of atoms and molecules around us. So we can actually shift potentials. We can shift probabilities in that instantaneous moment. And this is a mastery. This is not something like, oh yeah, it's just like, going to happen. This is like a dedication and mastery.
Yes. Yes.
This is high level mastery.
This is repetition at its best.
But I was going to say that for want of a better say, the normal average person that hasn't reached a level of awareness, or I don't want to be insensitive, but this is high level deep stuff that the masses kind of either are still in that old paradigm of, I'm just angry and I just want to just not deal with this, right? Would you say that most people are in that sort of camp?
Yeah, they've got to be. Oh, there's so much here.
Yeah, I know.
So much here, isn't there?
It is.
There's a lot. There's a lot here, and it's very complex, but at the same time, it is very simple. And what I'm experiencing with people in ORIGEN that are going through the InnerQuest, because this is what the InnerQuest grants you, right? It grants you the space to access the inner map and the tools so that you can cultivate the awareness to actually live and embody this way of being, right? It's not a way of just thinking. It's not a way of just perceiving. This is actually a way of being. And you had a moment where that happened, because if I don't consciously do that, I'm human, right? If I don't consciously and intentionally do this and I go out into the world, I'm going to experience that retaliation. I'm going to experience that resistance. I'm going to experience those moments of like you said, things happen, like you get a ticket and so on. But equally, when we intentionally live from this space within ourselves, we can equally experience like almost like moving through the world and doors opening, like being in an environment where things would normally happen, but now all of a sudden you're materializing a new experience within it. Like, for example, suddenly walking into a supermarket or a shop where before you would never have been able to, but now it's like almost people don't even see you. They don't even notice you. They might even smile back at you, right? You're not being met with this energetic resistance, but it's also because you're not operating within the system. You're actually operating from a space beyond it. And like, this is the thing, is like people, like it might sound airy fairy, but the thing is, and this is why I don't like to talk about it, I like to create a space where people can experience it.
Can I share with you an experience exactly like that? You know, when I first went into a supermarket without a mask on, I felt like everyone was looking at me. And a few people clocked me and went, that guy's not wearing a mask. And I was deep within the wrestle of that moment. I was deep within the resistance of it, totally bound up in that struggle and pain of, but I'm going to do this, until eventually you let go enough and like, I mean, I still think there are different keys to a process, like an actor who can't find the sense of the character. Sometimes the costume helps you get there. You put on the right clothes and Laurence Olivier would sometimes get lost and not find the heart and the essence of the way his character moved.
You're right. There are keys and
but
ways
he
to
used
dial you
keys, and I would use certain keys to push me into what I considered the right way of living, but knew that while outwardly I was doing the right thing, inwardly I was still in that struggle. But to continue the story on a bit more, I'm really just trying to just let go of all that. And so I went into the equivalent of what Americans would call a DMV to go and sit my license test today for my moped, because for more than 10 years, I've been driving around on it illegally till I finally get caught by a cop who says, $400 fine, dude, but he gelled with me because for the first time I just went, I am not going to be afraid of this police officer to the extent that I'm not going to be, oh my God, it's a cop that's pulled me over. I'm just going to be, so what? Whatever comes, comes. So I moved. I found a transition in myself that was, it's just better to be relaxed in any situation. And I walk into this place to get the license, and I literally spend the first 10 minutes talking to this lady and smiling and getting everything sorted. And then suddenly she goes, oh my God, you're not wearing a mask. I'd already been talking to her for 10 minutes.
Can I?
And then she realized, and this is exactly what Niamh is saying, because you normal human connection overcomes the rules.
The thing is, you come in loaded with all this mental fucking crap.
Yeah.
And I've had the same experience where I was not even thinking about it, and I just went about my business and nothing happened. So it's where you place your awareness. Is it? Maybe it's just that so simple. Where is your awareness at that moment? And
where does your awareness reside?
Yeah.
You can ask yourself that question. And it's also about like what, and again, like this, I might, repeatedly or repeat this over and over, but this is, in ORIGEN right now, I'm creating something called inner space. And the reason I'm just going to speak to that is like, it's also the space you occupy within reality. Because you're occupying a different reality within reality. You're occupying a different space within time and space continuum through the space which you occupy within your body. So when we're here, and we can even feel it in this conversation, the energy keeps wanting to bring us back in to this dialectic, right? You can feel it, right? Okay, let's try something. I'm gonna do something, and I just want you guys to just tune in and see if you feel anything. If you don't feel anything, that's okay too. Okay. And for those listening, I'm just gonna close my eyes, and I'm going to go through a shift in my inner space, and I'm just going to see if the guys feel anything. They may or may not, and if they don't, that's okay too. Okay. Do you feel any subtle differences? You don't have to just pretend. It's okay if you don't.
No, I took a moment just to be present in my body.
What about you, Steve? What's going on for you?
And
kind of the same. But I was already...
Same, but different?
Same, but different. I mean, I feel relaxed, you know.
Relaxed. There we go. Okay. So there was a subtle shift. So what we're experiencing here is also we're experiencing vibrational attunement.
I felt space as well.
Exactly. There we go.
A huge... Yeah. And I wasn't in my head.
So this is how powerful we are, because other people around us might not actually know, but when we create this vibrational shift within us, what happens is we're actually bringing everyone else with us into that space.
Yeah.
I know when I'm in my head because I've experienced being fully present, I can't put it into words. And it fucks me off sometimes that I get too consumed in the head. And I hope this is useful to our listeners, that it creates some kind of inner inquiry, or it just has some sort of moment where they go, fuck yeah, I'm human, man. And I get caught up in shit, and it's like I want to do better, and I've been on this path, and yet sometimes we overcomplicate everything, and yet it's so simple.
Yeah. It's
we package it in ways, and yet it's like, it's just be, just I don't know. I can't put it into words.
Well, you were liberated there, right there. That's liberation, right there.
It's just that moment of just.
I have an image of when I let go. I have an image in my mind, or a realization that's a little bit like the things that are the rules telling you what you should adhere to in the programming are like that moment when a child is making demands at a parent or an adult, and you just kind of laugh and go, it's just a child.
Yeah.
And you can sort of go, well, okay, buddy. Okay. Okay. And carry on. And as that sense of calm comes through you, you realize that what's screeching at you doesn't have to be something that you go, oh yeah, I've got to do that. And you go, it's just okay. It's okay. Everything is just okay. And, carry on. And I don't like being oblivious to things, because that's another way of getting there, which is just another version of being in your own head, but in escapism mode. But it's being just okay with it, and it not mattering, and something you can ignore, because I mean, even in meditation, things come up and you've got to learn to just keep moving past it if you get repetitive thoughts.
I love how this conversation just naturally flows, but you just spoke into something really important there, Steve. This liberation it's mental, it's physiological, it's emotional, it's energetic, right? And so in that moment of micro moment of stillness that we just experienced there, right? Obviously there was numerous things that were going on my side that I didn't speak into, but subtly, if we had even expanded time a little bit more there together, what's actually happening is, and this is what we do in Inner Space, is we learn how to shift our awareness from the mind, bring it into coherence with the heart and emotional center. But what as we decrease our awareness, or we shift our awareness, right, what's happening is we're actually opening up space. Time is slowing down. Our awareness is expanding. We're taking up more space in our physical body, and equally in the environment we're in. And a lot of our trouble is that we don't even know how to consciously take up space. So therefore we are the effect of our environment, not the effect of it. Okay. And there was a piece there about,
hang on. Can you say that again? Yeah. Therefore we are the effect of our environment, not the
effect of it, rather than being the effect.
Yeah.
Being affected by it. Yeah. And this is like the whole inside out versus outside in, is like we must remember how to turn the hours inwards and cultivate this space. Now there's more to this, right? It's not just about like intention and creating space and all of this. And it is a lot more complex, but it's so simple once we master it. Once we remember how to do this and come back into our physical bodies, we get to rewire our autonomous nervous system. So our autonomous nervous system is that part of our nervous system that's in reaction, that's in fight or flight. And that's the fear-based response, right? It overrides our mental capacity, our mental faculties. And like before we know it, we're already like, boom, into fear, right? But you just use that perfect example of the child. Our child is playing a tantrum, right? What can happen when a child is playing a tantrum? Sometimes the child can trigger the autonomous nervous system of the parent. And what happens is the parent goes into reaction and then things escalate and it ends up, who's in control there?
Child.
The child or the parent? Exactly. Okay, the externalist. So the external is in control. However, if you knew how to master your primordial breath and you knew how to master your inner space in that moment, and just a brief micro moment of stillness, you were able to shift into that state of awareness, override your autonomous nervous system, and choose to regulate yourself, find your center, access a higher awareness or perspective, and then choose to, well, there's a lot more happening, but you're also choosing to shift the energy in your environment. So you are therefore now altering and changing the heart rate, the breath of the child. And this comes to like even, what we're seeing with conscious parenting, like the power we have to self-soothe or to soothe our child and to teach them how to regulate their nervous system consciously. But we then become the effect of the environment. We become the source of influence. And we are responding to that. Now, this also doesn't address the part of the conversation where emotion is triggered, right? There's the energetic, there's the physiological. So we're addressing, the nervous system and our natural impulses. There is our lived and learned memory that gets triggered. So the belief systems, the past, our reactions based on past lived and learned memory. But also now there is emotional memory being triggered. So there's emotion that arises. It's fear, it's anger, it's sadness, whatever that is. We cannot bypass that. What we can do, however, is I create a space to empower people to move through the emotional translation process where they get to translate and transmute that emotion consciously, by creating the right inner space to do so that then they're responding from a place beyond it. So it's not bypassing, it's not like, now there are ways in the moment, if you need to, you can set certain controls and limits going, I'm not in the space right now to process this, but I am going to do it in a moment or a space that I have the capacity to do so. But the thing is like this path, the path of the wise warrior, the path of synthesis, the path of wholeness and integration is we cannot bypass the emotional. We cannot bypass the inner wounds and traumas, because those are also the leaks. They are also the ways in which and I wanted to speak into that where, like you said, you got your driving license. That was, you were sealing a leak there. Because another part of this liberation piece is that we need to become aware of where we hold unprocessed emotions, our wounds, our traumas. They also can be the cracks or the ways in which the matrix can stay hooked into our being, right? And little things like that is that if we are in retaliation, if we're not living from a greater spatial awareness, and then we're going out into the world and we're in reaction and revolt, then things like that like, for example, that experience with the license, you not having a license, that could be a way in which the system or that energy will come in to try and trigger you again, right? and try to hook you back into its grip. But by you choosing to I'm going to actually get that license, that's sealing that leak. That's no longer a way in which you can be triggered back into its matrix again, right? Now, this is a whole other conversation, but what I wanted to bring it back to is we cannot bypass the emotional processing. We cannot bypass this piece. And this is what takes time, space, and patience. And that's why this journey is like, it's not a one, and this is why I'm less and less going on podcasts to speak into this kind of things, because I can really only create a space where a person can directly experience this for themselves and to do it in their own pace and their own time in harmony with their nervous system. But perhaps, what I was going to say right now is maybe we can just do a simple process right now that everyone here listening can take with them. That could maybe be the catalyst for people to begin to experience micro moments of greater awareness and perspective in the everyday. And that this will be a catalyst for them to begin to enter into the exploration of what it may feel like to live from a space beyond. So I know that the people that I've shared these tools with, she's a friend, she's a client and a friend, but she's a very close friend. She did this practice when she was with her mother the other day. And she's been probably mastering some of these practices for over a year. And she was with her mom. And I call this the subtle orientation, right? And she just took a moment while she was with her mom. And they were chatting, and she just took a moment to energetically do this. And her mom immediately was like, "What did you just do there?" And she just smiled. And she said, no, what did you just do there? Because she just felt so relaxed. And it was just the immediate, her mother felt something so tangible instantly, right? And she was my friend was really taken by the fact that her mom, who probably wouldn't, practice anything like this or even be aware that she even does this, but that she was able to feel it in that moment. And this is how powerful even a simple practice like what I'm going to share with you now can be. And as we develop our mastery of it, we begin to consciously understand the processes that are taking place later. Okay, because this is what we're operating here, or what we're connecting with, is really a greater source of our intelligence, which, they often refer to as neuroception, which is our ability to scan, sense, feel, and even control our environment and through our feeling senses. And we have the power, that has the power to override the autonomous nervous system, but also to arrive the programs, the imprinting, the limiting beliefs, the limitation that is imprinted upon us, that is stored in the limbic brain.
Wow. That's crazy.
I've had quite a transformational moment sitting here listening to that, Rob. You can see my eyes. Yeah.
You were in deep.
Thanks for that, Niamh. I don't know if you could tell whilst you were talking. I mean, listening to you was just gold, but I could just feel this emotion flowing through me, and I had to wipe my eyes there a couple of times. It's actually given me a flashback to an experience in my life which was incredibly freeing, and it reminds me of just how much more free I can be. And I'll explain, because I don't want that to be left with mystery. For what it's worth, the example may not seem like much to people who are listening, but it meant a great deal to me. And I don't know why everything you said here triggered this, and even you tell me if you can relate to it, but I was doing this role as an actor a few years ago where I was actually playing the character of Jack the Ripper. You remember seeing that show, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And the director had a great deal of wisdom. And to connect with that character, he actually put I don't know why he did this, but he made me close my eyes, breathe deeply, kneel on the floor and be covered in a blanket while other people pushed me around. And I had to keep my eyes closed. And I found a greater sense of strength in myself just connecting with my inner self than if I were to be avoiding the blows and pushes and punches and shoves. If my eyes were open and awake and observing it, I felt, and he observed and acknowledged that there was so much more strength in me connecting with that inner place. And then that proceeded onto that role. And I think it brought a lot of strength to play what ultimately was a very dark character, but is really the opposite of who I am in this lifetime. I'm not that person, but I found great strength in it. And it was for the time period of that show, I felt so much more grounded as a human. And as you spoke into that, I just felt this release of emotion because that's there in me and I just need to connect with it. And it's good and it's freeing. It's very relaxing too. It just makes me feel, just makes me go, this is who I am. I don't need to worry about the worries of the day. I don't need to get caught up here. Just be here. Yeah.
So you've shifted from the beginning of this conversation, since we did that process. There's a lot that's happening in the energy here because I'm also like, this is attunement, right? But it's also, we're also experiencing the effect of osmosis. So you entered into that space, right? So you've come into your center, you've regulated your nervous system, you're moved outside the realms of the intellect. And then as you soften and open, you had that memory arise. Okay. And this tells me that you're actually in your emotional and sensing faculties, and that memory came up, and what you spoke into was exactly right. So this is how intelligent we are as human beings. Your neuroception detected my field, right? And you matched to mirror that. Now your system went searching for a reference point for what you're feeling, and you were transported back to that reference point in that memory. And therefore your consciousness and your intelligence was like, this is what you're feeling in this moment. You were feeling your center of power. So your intelligence translated what you were feeling without anyone else telling you, because you were able to resource a memory and intelligence that you wouldn't be able to access if your awareness was here, but because you moved into a greater source of intelligence in your feeling state, you were able to perceive that. You opened up the space for that memory to emerge, and equally, you had a direct experience of your own capacity to be able to translate that memory effectively, therefore giving yourself a new reference point.
The reference point, though, gives me a mental reference point to return to my heart.
Exactly. So that's the integrate. That's the coherence.
It's not all bad up here, because we will go to these places in our brain and go, hey, remember that? Oh, come back down to it.
Yeah. And that's what we're doing here. We're not like moving out of the mind. We're bringing what's called coherence between the heart, the mind, and the emotional center, which is off of the third brain. And But
that was awesome. That was just awesome. Thanks, Niamh. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's probably people that maybe are listening to this right now that also have been closing their eyes and listening to this, and they went through and had a direct visceral experience of a memory or reference point emerge through them. And what we're sharing here, it's not necessarily anything new. You know, I feel like, you know, my quest, my journey my own quest to discover the true nature of our human intelligence has led me all around the world. And it's led me to connect with many different indigenous cultures, many different teachers, and even exploring many different esoteric and mystery school teachings, right? All in the quest to uncover the truth. And my journey has led me to creating my own synthesis of, you know, I find that there's an original thread of truth that's woven within many original teachings, right? And original practices. And what I've created is my own blueprint, my own map, which is the synthesis of all that lived and learned experience, right? And I suppose my own inner wisdom. And then I've distilled that. And And I call that like my original blueprint. It's not the blueprint. It's just my own synthesis and integration of it. And I've distilled them into many different forms. And this map and this blueprint contains many different practices, principles, and subtle, like even tools, right? And, you know, what I'm speaking into, this is the distillation of what can be perceived as very, very complex, right, processes. We can distill them into very simple and practical tools for everyday life. And what you just shared, also the practice, you know, where they covered your head and, you know, they were pushing you around, it's a principle of orientation. It's the principle of coming into your center of power, and it's been known for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. And this is, you know, I love this. I don't know if we can do this on camera. I don't know if the studio will allow it, but, you know, are you guys able to stand up next to one another, or is that even possible for us to do a simple practice?
Give us a second.
With one another? Yes. This might test us a little bit.
I'm going to stand up. I'm going to stand up, and I'm just going to raise the camera here so that you can still see us whilst we're standing.
Okay. Let's give this a whirl, and I don't know if this is going to be possible, but let's try it. And if it doesn't work, then I can maybe verbally describe what we're doing. Okay, perfect.
All right.
Okay. So one person's going to volunteer to be, let's say you're going to be the pendulum, right? So you're going to stand in one place, and the other person's going to be the force that moves the pendulum. So you decide amongst yourselves who's going to play what role. Because you guys are actors, so you should be good at this. So who's who?
I think Steven's decided.
Steve, you're the pendulum, are you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So come back to me. Bring your awareness. So you're dropping in. So bring your awareness back up to your mind. Just tap your head like this. So just your fingers. Okay. Just stay there, right? Just tapping your head. Okay. Rob, what I want you to do, I don't want you to do anything. So you're going to be the force. Okay. So I want you to gently push Steve. So be gentle, but just push him. Just with enough force. Okay. No, more than that. Give him a good push. Because we want to test his balance. Okay, so what we just saw was that Steve easily lost his balance, okay? Okay, Steve, now what I want you to do, right, is, so tapping your head, you're just going to take a breath in through the nose, and you're just going to acknowledge your awareness here in the mind, okay? And breathe out through the nose. And just acknowledging the mind and just saying, thank you. It's okay to rest. It's safe now to rest. And as you do that, take another in-breath through the nose. And as you breathe out through the mouth, I want you now to feel your awareness drop into the heart center. Now tapping the midpoint in your chest as you bring your awareness here. So this is just going to help fix your awareness here. Now take another in-breath through the nose. Expand and breathe into the heart and out through the mouth. Okay. Now, Rob, I want you to try to push Steve off his center. Or off.
Same sort of force?
Same force, yeah. Okay. So we can still see that that Steve, he didn't stumble as much, but he did still lose his balance. And I wish everyone could see this. Okay.
You've no idea
Great.
how strong Rob is.
Okay. So Steve or Rob represents the influences of the outside world, right? So the text messages, the media, what's happening in the supermarket, the challenges, the struggles, you know, the police officer with the fine, all of these things, okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to take what we're doing is we're orienting your awareness. We've brought coherence to the mind. Now we've brought coherence to the heart and the mind, but now we need to bring coherence into the emotional center as well. The emotional center is like your solar plexus. It's your third brain. So we're going to do the same practice again. You're going to take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. But this time I want you to take both your hands and tap your solar plexus. Okay? Yeah. So a little bit lower than that. So just above your belly button. So if you do this with your hand, creating a triangle with both your hands, exactly. In breath through the nose and out through the mouth, breathing into the solar plexus. Okay. Feeling your energy center here, finding your center of gravity. Can you feel that? Can you find your center of gravity in your physical body? You can feel that. Okay. So what you're essentially doing is you're also orienting your awareness inward. You're finding your fixed point in this spinning world. You're finding that you are the center of your own universe. Okay. Before we did this exercise, your center, your point of focus, your fixed point was on the external. It's okay, because that can happen, and it can happen numerous times, thousands of times throughout the day. But we can instantly rewire it. Okay, now take one more breath, stabilize this. Now, Rob, I want you to give him a good push, just to test his stability. Wow, he's not budging. Oh, okay, so his feet didn't move this time, but the upper body did a little bit, right? Okay. We're going to take it one step further. And this is where your imagination is going to be key. As Albert Einstein says, logic will take you from A to B, imagination will take you everywhere else, right? So now you're going to fix your awareness in the heart and core of the earth. To do that, you're going to take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And you're going to visualize in whatever way you desire. Your imagination will be key. Like visualize your energy now moving down through the earth. Feel it now connecting to the heart and core of the earth. And you can even go one step further and feel it connect to the natural essence of the earth. Just stabilize it. Okay, when you're ready, give us a nod. And now, Rob, I want you to try and give him a good push now. And let's try and throw Steve off his center. You're like the mainstream media now. Go. No, do you know what happened there? When we made that joke, your awareness came back up here, Steve.
Did you notice?
You started laughing. Yeah. Okay.
All right, I'm going to face Rob this time. He's getting me on the side.
So this is how easy it is to become distracted. Can you see that? But it's okay. The being in the mind is not a bad thing. It's actually good. We need it for processing. We need it for work. We need it to do things. We need it to be able to relay our personality. But we have to bring awareness to when we're operating within it and when we're not. Okay. Steve, I want you to go through that process yourself. Okay. And I want you to anchor in the earth. So move from the mind, the heart, the emotion center, and into the earth. And hopefully people can maybe even be doing this while they're listening to us.
Yeah.
Okay. Steve, let us know when you feel you're there.
I'm here.
And actually, yeah, there's I teach people in inner space ways in which they can actually check kind of like a bypass tool to be able to check like how quickly they are really in their center. Okay. He's there now. Rob, try to throw him off his center now. Strong. Try it again. And if you want to, keep your eyes closed. Turn the eyes inwards. No distractions. Now when he's least expected, Rob, give him a push.
Okay.
How are you feeling there, Steve?
Good. I mean, Rob gives me a hard push and I move back a little bit, but I don't feel like I'm off my center.
You're not, right. Yeah.
I feel I could take that repeatedly. It's when you have your eyes closed and there's a sudden out of the blue push, it's completely a surprise. but it doesn't mean that I'm off my center. It just means you gather your strength much quicker than you would otherwise. I really feel like people who practice, for example, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu must know this on another level.
Yes.
When they're absolutely overwhelmed on the floor of a dojo.
What we just did is actually from Aikido. Believe it or
really?
not.
Right. Yeah. Because it's utilizing an outside force in either, you're either going with it or you're basically deflecting it or transmuting it or using it to your advantage.
And this is again, you know, I probably sound like I'm repeating myself over and over, but this is why I'm so passionate about cultivating inner space, is because in Aikido, when two masters meet, they will probably never engage in a fight, because when two masters meet, they hold their center, they look at each other, and then they bow, because they can see that they're in their wholeness. So they believe that, like, when any force comes at you, it's because that force, that energy is out of balance. So if it's a person that's coming at you, it's because they're out of balance. And so the Aikido master has a few options, but their ultimate aim is to empower and support that energy to come back into its center. Okay, so they're not to retaliate, they're not going to fight it, but they're actually, the whole aim is it's alchemy. It's alchemy. Okay. This is the same in the outside world. It's like, I know that, like, my role as a human being, my potential is actually to alchemize the imbalance in the world. And so, like an Aikido master, I don't fear it because I'm in my wholeness. And so I see that which is out of balance. And so when that comes at me, when I'm in my center, I can, one, choose to just allow that energy to float past me, to be a witness to it, to observe it. Okay. And that can happen in Aikido. So they learn certain maneuvers where they maneuver and just allow the force that's coming towards them to float past them. And what happens in that moment is that energy has no resistance, and that energy dissipates, therefore losing its power. Okay, we can also see this as what's unfolding in the world. That's one way in which we can respond. Because what we're doing here is we're in response, not in reaction. Because when we're in our center of power, we're the autonomous nervous system, we're in response. So that's one way. The other way in Aikido is they choose to embrace the force. So they embrace the force that's coming towards them. They maneuver that person into a position of safety, and they bring them back into a state of equilibrium to bring them back into their center. Therefore,
if you could see how small the space was in here, that's definitely what I would have done. Yeah,
it's fascinating. You've got this. Well, using Aikido is such a beautiful analogy.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that you were so well versed in the way of Aikido.
I'm not a master by any means. I did hold a retreat in Australia many years ago, and I had an Aikido master come in and do a workshop with us as women, and it was left a really long-lasting imprint for me. And it was after many, many years later, after a lot of inner work and understanding the complexity of energetics. And also, I feel that, you know, I don't know if I don't speak about this in terms of past lives. Essentially, I have a different perception of that. But I believe that our body stores the memory of all iterations of life, and includes the memory of perhaps many different expressions of, you know, if we look even to quantum physics, you know, energy can occupy space across many different fragments of reality at one time, right? And so that could suggest that there's many different aspects of me playing out many different expressions of life simultaneously.
There was a movie by Mark Wahlberg recently that is exactly that.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to remember the name of it, where there, as you were saying, there's a memory of past life incarnations, and it gets reignited or awoken, and you go, I didn't know I could do that.
Exactly.
I'm
going to try and figure out what that film was. I think I know what you mean.
I remember that film just being like, wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
So for me, it's like, people can say intuitive, they can say, extrasensory. But for me, I have the capacity to access and translate my genetic memory, which contains the memory of this wisdom. And I know that I have experienced or have the memory of the mastery of some of these martial arts. And I know that this is something that you experienced it, Steve, in a brief moment where a reference point from this earlier in this life when you were as an actor, right?
Yeah.
The same thing can happen once you enter a certain degree of inner mastery, where you can access other genetic memory, natural traits and abilities, and you can begin to resource and utilize those abilities again in the present moment or in this life, if you want to speak it in terms of past life, present and future life. For me, it's all happening. What's that word? I've just got a blank.
Simultaneously.
Simultaneously. Yeah. And this is where mastery true comes in, because where our awareness resides is where we tap into, but where we occupy space. So I can tangibly move in and out of space and time and access this information, this wisdom. So this is why I'm very passionate about the inner space piece, because I feel like this is the first part of the InnerQuest journey to remember our potential, because as we master the inner space, we can allow for more energy and frequency to move through our body, our physical bodies, and then we can allow ourselves to translate the genetic memory as information, and then we gain access. And you know what I'm speaking into? It's not just all airy-fairy. Like, this is like we're really bridging science with spirituality here. We're really bridging spirit and matter. This is spiritualization meeting the materialization.
Yeah, I'm really feeling that. Yeah.
Yeah,
and ultimately it has to be tangible in order for us to experience, in order for it to be of benefit in our human lifetime.
And speaking of lifetimes, the movie that Rob was referring to, we just brought it up. It's called Infinite with Mark Wahlberg, but it's coming out. It's streaming June 10th, and I don't know on what platform, but it's coming out June 10th.
No, I've seen it.
Oh, was it last June then?
Yeah.
Then I can watch it this week. Wonderful. Yeah.
It's always interesting that, in the movie genre, that these truisms play out. Have you noticed that?
Well,
that's probably a whole nother topic.
I know we're digressing a little.
Yeah. But it is interesting.
Yeah.
So people have this knowledge, and it's sort of getting to the masses in that form.
There's that what's that movie called Moon something?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's something coming out soon. It's about the moon being hollow, and people have for many years suggested that in fact it is a structure that may be like that. And
right.
I love how Hollywood reveals a bit of truth from time to time. Sorry to digress, Niamh, but it's just one of those things.
No.
Yeah. That's an interesting premise, because I've often wondered, that's a whole another topic of the moon and its presence and what it embodies and its effect and everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, and the read up for Infinite is simply a man discovers that his hallucinations are actually visions from past lives. But that's right on topic with what we're talking about and accessing across dimensional spaces of yourself. I believe anyway. Yeah. I feel so grounded from what we've just been through here, and I hope others feel that and go through this process themselves as you've been speaking with maybe with their eyes closed. If you're driving, maybe don't do that.
But, thank you, Niamh, for sharing what you just shared and that experience and that tangible, what would you call that exercise? Do you have a name for that?
I call it the orientation.
Yeah.
So you're orienting your awareness inward, and you're finding your center of gravity. Perhaps maybe by the time this podcast releases, I may be able to provide access to a video for people, a link that they can actually watch me go through this practice, because I think visually being able to also see will support people as well. And I think there's obviously so many more principles that we layer on top of that practice, right? So that it helps you to master and live and operate that more and more within each moment of your day. But it is natural, and I just want to say this, that like, just as you experienced, Steve, you did that practice, but the minute we had a joke and then you opened your eyes and you saw Rob, right? Your awareness, like I immediately saw your awareness come back into the mind. And that's okay, because you're relating now through a personality level, you're engaging, and you're also computing, okay, what's happening, because you opened your eyes. So it immediately brings your awareness back here. That's not a bad thing. We actually always need to be oscillating. What's key is our awareness of where our awareness resides. So it's being able to bring more conscious awareness to that. And, you know, going into the supermarket, maybe just take a few breaths and do this before getting out of the car. You know, I will assert that when the police officer pulled you over on your scooter, that there was an aspect of your being that probably vibrationally or subtly through the prayer just brought you more into your body. And you had that direct experience with the police officer playing out differently. So you're more in response than in reaction. But play with it, become curious. Like, this is like, we get to play and with reality. Reality is malleable.
Oh, yeah. Malleable. That's right. In that moment,
right.
I took a breath and went, doesn't have to be that way.
You were the effect of that moment. You weren't affected by it.
I mean, if I do say so, that was my Neo in the Matrix moment where I put up my hands and the bullets just fell.
I just felt it.
Clink, 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 clink on the ground.
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah. No, I wish, but
is Niamh, what we're talking about here, basically us as infinite creator beings.
Reality management.
Well, it's reality management, but tapping into that essence and recognizing that.
You know, the Matrix, you know, my hands up, you know, where they do that move where like time stops.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have achieved a level of inner mastery where I can experience that throughout the day.
No way.
If I so choose. Yeah.
So, Trinity, please explain.
No, I don't do this. For everyone listening, I've got my hands in the air. But yes, that's we have the capacity to slow time down. And for years, I was experiencing this in my sessions with my clients. And I was a little bit freaked out by it because I didn't actually know what was happening. So for a long time, you see, I suppose for me, I'm a natural born intuitive. I feel, sense, and I see, clairvoyant, clairsentient. So when you sometimes are born with these innate gifts, it's later in life you become conscious of what's actually unfolding. Okay, so it takes a while to embrace them, to allow it, then to translate it, but then to consciously understand, okay, wow, this is actually what I'm experiencing. But for years in my sessions, I would notice that it felt like time would stop. And in that moment, and in the beginning, I wouldn't be able to control this. It would just happen spontaneously. But now I can consciously choose it. And of course, first and foremost, always by agreement with the other person. But time stands still, and in that moment, reality actually shifts for me. So the background of the room changes, and I start to see through. It's like space opens up. I start to see through particles and atoms, and then I begin to see different versions of that person. So their infinite self, their source. So I can see like time stands still and realities merge. And if I so choose, I can merge with a different version of reality, and I have a direct experience of occupying a different time and space with this other person. And this is where it gets really interesting, because now you have to manage moving in and out of reality.
Yeah. Is that accessing your multi-dimensional self? Would you call it that? Or was it something else?
Yeah, I guess so. For me, it comes back to it's our original blueprint. And so we're occupying a space and time right now, but we're equally occupying a space, multiple spaces beyond time as well.
But it's having access to that and having an experience. Mm-hmm. And you're having that experience, and you're able to engage with it, interpret it, and have, as you're saying now, some level of control or decision making surrounding it.
Yeah, and there are a lot of things to learn and to master, because initially there are a lot of things that can happen, and whether or not you want to allow the influence of those other realities to play a part in this reality. I think it's in one of the superhero movies. There's a particular... What's the guy that
the Marvel movie?
Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
Doctor Strange.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
This
yeah.
is a Doctor Strange in real life. Like real life, honestly. But then here's the thing. This is also possible moving through the world. So I've had direct experience. I don't think I've ever spoken about this.
I was going to say.
There's a lot of things that I haven't
I'm
spoken
saying,
about.
have you spoken about this? Because this is far out, fascinating. I'm just... Wow.
Because I want to bring this conversation I want to ground this into practicality and normality, because as we begin to awaken and expand our awareness and step more into our potential as human beings, we realize that these are actually very natural processes. And even the indigenous Australian people, the Maori people, I'm sure that even in their culture, they would talk about their ability to enter the dream time, the no space, and bilocate. But what is bilocating? Is it their awareness is bilocating, or are they physically bilocating? Right. But what I wanted to speak into is this is also possible when you're moving through the world. And, I've had direct experience of merging with the morphogenetic field of a place.
Sorry, explain that, the morphogenic field.
So the morphogenetic field of a location is kind of like the aura or the energetic aura of a specific place. Right. Just like we've got our own auric field. Or even morphogenetic field of the human body, right? It's the same with a physical location. And so that is why, people often ask me, where do you get this wisdom? How did you create this blueprint? Where does this all come from? And I intuitively would be guided to travel to different places. And when being there, I would enter into the inner space within myself. And then I would enter into the morphogenetic field of the place. And I would begin to perceive and translate many dimensional layers of information that exist or coexist in that environment. And, we hear about this, that the world and nature is multidimensional, and that we can access many different dimensions. But this is actually very possible and natural as human beings to be able to begin to translate more of our world. But here's the thing, and one of the biggest blocks or limits at the moment for us as human beings accessing our true potential is all around safety. And a lot of my journey has been around safety. So before we can even the practice that I just shared with you guys, you would be surprised the amount of people, myself included when I initially started that, actually struggle with it. Okay, some people, I've had clients that can't even breathe and drop into the heart because they don't feel physically safe to do so. This is not a conscious thing. This is...
Oh, wow. That's something...
Safe in their bodies or safe with you guiding?
Safe in their bodies. And so a lot,
because I felt so...
You felt safe, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But Rob and I have known each other for years.
Yeah, that's true.
We're in our studio. We're both very relaxed in audition situations where we put ourselves totally on the line. Yeah,
you could have asked us to basically...
And your exercise in our instance, this is all in our favour for why we would feel safe. Yeah. The exercise that you made us do took me back to the one I described to you earlier. And so I already had a sense of absolute joy of being back there. So I can only imagine how upsetting and heart-wrenching it would be not to feel that.
Yeah, I felt that in my heart. Like
when you say that, I was like, oh, those poor bastards, I think, who don't have that sense of being able to drop in. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is where, so there's a few things. So the first thing that we do in inner space is, and this could take people weeks, months, it could take people years to master this, is cultivating safety. And it's a multisensory process. It's a multi-directional process. So it's approaching this, again, not just through the mind and the intellect. It's there's many different tools and processes that we go through to engage the full multisensory aspect of the body. But the reason I'm saying this is that, like, I couldn't understand sometimes why other people weren't having the same direct experiences as me. Why is it that, like, I'm physically standing here in this location with this other person, but how is it that I have the ability to naturally move in and out and to experience and translate more information and wisdom in this space? And how come this other person that's occupying the same space, or so I think, is having a very limited experience?
Yeah. It's like you're connected to everything.
Yeah, but the thing is, and this is, I'm going to stretch, is as we awaken, right? And I've had many burnouts in my life, and this is the thing, is that we expand our awareness. But if we don't have the tools to master that expansion, our nervous system will contract and we go into burnout. We develop illness, imbalance, and we go into shutdown. And that is a key indicator that we haven't developed the safety within our nervous system to hold that expansion. And so that's another thing in the mastery in inner space, is that we have to learn the skills and tools to expand at the degree and at the depth that are that's in harmony with our nervous system. And I share this because I learned the hard way. Okay. And you see, we, particularly those of us who are on this quest to awaken more, we want to know more. We want to awaken more. Sometimes that can be our greatest ally, but sometimes if we're not doing it in harmony with our nervous system, then our nervous system can shut down, and we go through these periods of massive expansion followed by massive contraction. And it's like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
But what I want to empower people to do, because I learned the hard way, is like, how can we choose to accelerate our awakening process, but to do it in a way that's in harmony, and to provide the skills to stabilize it. And there's no one path for everyone either. So it's each person will essentially be leading themselves on their own path. So are you going to say something there?
Yeah, I was going to say, you have to allow time for the decompression or the assimilation. Is that what you're saying? To avoid the burnout? And the other it's so for everyone, it's a self-paced journey, which makes sense.
Self-paced, yeah.
But what I wanted to, just for the benefit of our listeners, what does a burnout feel like? Because you've experienced it. What does that feel like for you? Yeah.
Just before I go to that, I just want to say, you said it requires time.
Yeah.
What if it requires space? Because if we know how to carve out space, this comes back to the conversation around time being malleable. Those that just completed the first iteration of Inner Space that we did last year are having like tangible experiences with time now, where they're
time and space is so linked.
Yeah, right? Like they're able to carve out space. So if they accelerate,
if I'm just having a stab, forgive the ignorance, but if you can manipulate the space, time has to follow, right?
Yeah.
It has to, because they're linked, and people don't get that.
Yeah. So it's like, we think about it in terms of like a linear journey, and we think, okay, it's going to take me 3 weeks or a couple of months to master this, to develop this inner mastery. And I'm saying, well, perhaps not, because if you learn how to master space and shift your awareness out of time, you could exponentially expand your awareness in a way that is perceived as a quicker amount of time, but really we're just playing with time and space. So some people felt like they had lifetimes worth of expansion in 3 months. That makes sense. What they would have perceived that would have taken them years of inner growth, they were able to achieve in harmony with their nervous system within a 3-month period. And that's because they learned how to expand outside of time.
Whoa.
Steve, I can see Steve is...
My mind is like...
You're making
something's dropping in.
Yeah, something's dropping for me. That I came up with this theory years ago, and I was just a young man, so might be bullshit. But people who don't believe in love at first sight or love arriving quickly clearly don't understand that some people can meet and over the course of a couple of weekends decide they're so madly in love and within a month they get married and have a happy life together, like a really positive story, right? And I thought about it and I thought that must be possible because there's this paradigm of connection takes time and
it has to develop.
You have to give it time. That's the mature way of doing it.
Yeah.
And I get that. And you're reminding me of this thought because my opposing thought for why it makes sense that people can fall in love at first sight and develop so quickly is because the love is a reflection of energy divided by time or time divided by energy. And it sort of relates to space. So if you only put this much, and I'm holding my fingers not far apart from each other, of connection into a relationship, then over a long period of time, that's a lot of energy. But if you put this much connection into the relationship over a short period of time, it can be the same amount of energy. So love at first sight is possible if it just pours on through in a short space because the same experience could be gained in terms if the person is reciprocating. Sure. And so as a romantic, I thought to myself, that's how it makes sense. Because some people are more willing to connect and open in a shorter space of time than others, but the end result is the same.
Yeah. Have you seen that Netflix show, Love is Blind?
No.
It's like that experiment.
No, actually.
It's really fascinating. It's like where they get a group of men and a group of women and then they date each other in these pods, but they can't see each other. So they're only there for a week and a half. And the idea is at the end of the experiment that they're like fall in love and they get married. But it's like in the matter of a month, this whole process happens. So like, what's interesting to see is even after 24 hours, they're forming connections because they're spending they're putting all this energy into the emotional connection. They can't see each other. They can hear each other. They can talk. But they're having these emotional connections really fast. And then within 2 or 3 days, they're proposing to one another. Like that's how fast. And then once they propose, then they meet. And then of course the physical side of it comes in.
Right.
And then only a few couples survive that. And then they have to go live together for a month and then they have to go get married and they have to decide on the altar if they're going to actually marry one another or not.
It's a good formula for good TV. It's a great formula for TV. It's like, I cannot wait to see what happens here. Yeah. But I totally get it because in those moments of eyes closed, just listening to the voice of the other person and you're bonding with that energy and you're relating and they're not seeing you and you're not seeing them. So all of those preconceived things about how do I appear, that's just all dropped and you drop those guards and the connections are made. Right?
This is a whole nother podcast because how much of that is our preconceived beliefs of how it's supposed to look.
Yeah.
And then we fit, that person across that pod, we make that fit because we want the same thing. And how much is it real connection and chemistry and all that? And, and you can just go into, that's a whole different podcast.
Do you know what's happening here?
What?
Can you see what's happening here? Like as the timeline of this conversation, like we're liberating ourselves.
Yeah.
And we're becoming aware of our own limits because we're now occupying space outside of the parameters of where we began the conversation.
Outside of the restricted mind frame.
Yeah. Yeah. And even the fact that you just said there, Rob, that, maybe that's the limits of how I perceive love because so we're creating space for a perception shift. And I know there's many ways that we can all go about liberating ourselves at this time. And equally, I'm just sharing my experience, the most potent and powerful way that I feel right now that I can liberate myself is by creating space to allow for perception, my perception to shift. And I just think it's magical that this is happening and we're having experiences on the podcast.
Well, we planned
just
it this
imagine.
way.
Oh, yeah, ruined it all. We planned it this way.
Yeah, we planned this. Didn't we? I set this intention right from the start. I mean, this is how I knew it was going to go.
Yeah, well done. I knew that vision board was for something.
Did you plan it or did you alter reality?
I kind of altered the reality, because like a true Aikido master.
Oh, yeah.
But jokes aside, like Niamh, you are such an embodiment because you took the practical, tangible steps to do where you're in this new physical location, new physical space. We see it, we feel it, all of the above. So that for me is like, it's real, it's tangible, you're speaking from a place of truth, from actual experience. And I think that we've got to all take that into our own lives and do what, like take that responsibility and shift and liberate and all that. I know I'm just getting really
yeah. Bob's getting fired up.
I'm getting fired up, but in a good way, in a really good way. And I think that's because I know I've, like, everything we've talked about, I've experienced. Like when you talked about that love form, I've experienced it, so I know. Yeah. So it's not coming from I wonder what that feel like. And it's about recreating more of those experiences. not just those experiences.
Just thinking, I know, bro, you've had fast love. No, but from the sincerest place, where you head over heels connecting with someone, it's amazing.
But you strip that all away. You go, well, how do you feel in that moment? You just feel alive.
Yeah.
You feel like that. And there was two words. It was alive and playfulness.
Yeah.
And that was just there was a state where you just go, And so the world hadn't changed, but I had changed, and my perception had changed, and how I viewed reality changed. That was the key.
Yeah.
And so the ocean was still the same, but I was different, or my relationship. Different. Yeah, or how I felt was different. The tree with the sun, it all just looked.
Yeah.
And I feel, without getting too we are the world about it, but love.
Go for it. Go otherworld.
No, I had truly, I can't remember, many years ago, I understood that the true meaning of love was the most powerful energy you could ever tap into. Mm-hmm. That if you just got a micro percentage of it, it was just the most powerful thing. And I'm not talking about romantic love. I'm not talking about Hollywood love. And that's great. But I'm talking about it's got a different feel to it. And I can't quite put it into words, but I understand it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
You were touched by life. They say to feel.
Well, I interpret life as love is forever. That's what came to me.
Oh, LIFE, yeah.
Yeah, that's love, because love was the most important thing, but that is the forever. And that's the infinite aspect of everything. It's the foundation of everything. The problem is that we fall into the distortion of it and the trappings and the whatever, but the very core of it.
I think we've got a podcast title.
What is it?
Life. Love is Forever with Niamh Cronin.
Could be.
Yeah.
And Rob and Steve.
Yeah.
I think there's a really beautiful synergy that happens here with us. I really like there's it's very rare. I will say that. And
that's a beautiful thing to say.
Thank you. Because
thank you.
I felt like some of the things you just shared, correct me if I'm wrong, you haven't shared some of that stuff. But
there's spaces and places, right?
Spaces, creating.
You wouldn't necessarily expect to see it on Instagram. You might see it on ORIGEN, and you might connect with it in one-to-one, and you might connect with it in a group. But there's spaces and places, and when we feel safe in a place like this, and that connection is huge, the time that passes becomes an irrelevance to the energy that transits in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that piece around love. That could be you're right, it could be a whole other podcast, because it comes back to the emotional translation process. So we carry so much distortion around how we translate our emotions, and particularly how we translate love. And that's not our fault. And we don't need to beat ourselves up about that, because it's the lived and learned memory. It's the pre-programmed, it's the cultural and societal programming, but also it's the memory we hold from our ancestors, the memory we hold from, our body is a composite of memory. So we are translating that energy and motion that moves through our body through that memory. But again, this, why I talk about, unlocking our original genetic blueprint and our capacity to translate that memory effectively. And that's where the perception shift happens, is because we're creating the space to allow for a new translation of that feeling to emerge. And you had that experience where you had this like moment of instant realization, like, this is what love is. It's not what
it's connection to everything. It was just this connect. It was like I was at one.
Even the moment you say it, you know how it sounds. I was at one with the universe.
But that's exactly. But it's
you had a samadhi moment.
I've experienced it. And it's just like, I know. I've touched it, and it was for
you were touched by life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's just, and here's the thing: it felt so different, yet felt so familiar at the same time.
Isn't it interesting how you struggle to own the fact that you had that experience?
Well, I want to recreate it. I want more of those experiences, and I'm thinking, well, how did I do it? What were the events? Where was I at? And sometimes I feel it's just an organic part of, like you're in the ocean and you catch that wave and you're like, whew.
I think that's the key. I think the question you just asked there, how did I do it? What was I doing at the time? I think that's exactly the right question to ask, Rob. And I think you're on the money, because there's certain things I've seen you do in your life where you manifest a certain reality and you hold it with consistency. Now, I'm always impressed by that. So I dare say you will do the same again with consistency when you find the answer to that question.
Yeah, I have a reference point at least. I have the experience, so I can go back to it.
And I have a reference point from the thing that Niamh did.
Yeah. So
I can go back to that.
It's not from the books.
It's not from the books,
It's not
Wim
from
Hof.
the book. Because it's actual.
Sorry, that's our impersonation of Wim Hof.
Yeah.
It's not from the books.
Because it has to be
from yourself.
Your own experience.
Yeah.
And then you can relate it back. Yeah. Because it's yours. It's.
So this is the thing, right? We have these flash moments, these spontaneous insights, right? Natural epiphanies and awakenings. They're very organic. And what I'm observing and witnessing with the space that we're creating in ORIGEN, and I'm just speaking back to this, like, people can recreate this in their own way, but what I'm observing is that as people are becoming more equipped with these tools in a mastery, is they're being able to harness more and more of these moments and these epiphanies each and every day, and consciously move in and out of those experiences more and more. So what can happen is you have a spontaneous insight, okay? And that's a lot of information to compute for the mind, the body, the nervous system.
Yeah.
And so that's also a way of the nervous system managing, it's like safety. So I will assert that the more safety you can cultivate in your body, and the more you can learn to master and hold your inner space, that you will be able to access that more on a regular basis. And this is why I'm so passionate about, I want to create spaces for people to enter into their potential, to have continued lived embodied experience of what they're capable of. And once you have that, like you said, that cannot be stripped from you.
Yeah.
That cannot be taken away from you. And the more we live from this space, like as this conversation is going on, right, it's getting more and more exciting. We're beginning to tap into the probability of our potential.
Yeah.
And we're not concerned about the drama that's unfolding. We're not ignoring it. No, right. But do you see how that was like trying to entrap us at the beginning of the conversation? And like how we tapped into our potential. And now look, we're operating in a space beyond it, and we're focusing on our evolution. We're focusing on our capacity and our potential, and we're not focusing on the limitation of it.
We liberated ourselves.
What's that from?
I don't know. I just made it up.
Oh, well, we did. We liberated ourselves. Yeah, cool.
Niamh, I think it's natural to want to experience these amazing moments because I believe that's what we're here to do as human beings. But something came up for me is a limitation, and we're talking about liberation, limitations and stuff. Is it too much to ask to have continual moments of, like I call them peak experience, or cresting, where you're on that wave? Is it too much to ask, or is it just a part of, because this is what I've been trying to figure out for myself, is it just a part of the human experience where you're going to go through the ups and downs naturally, and you can't always be riding?
Are you trying to avoid the downs, Rob?
Well, no, because but is that just another belief system? That's what came up for me.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
Or can we?
Yeah. Well, like if we have any resistance to any expression or aspect of life, then we're in resistance to life itself. So like, yes, so there's always a natural expansion and contraction, right?
Yeah.
But what we want to do is we want to collapse the time and space between the contraction and the expansion. So you're having more and more.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm waving my finger up and down madly, like the wings of a buzzy bee. You want them to come nice and tight and close. Yeah,
and like a hummingbird.
Like a hummingbird's wings.
Yeah.
And a hummingbird is the only bird that can fly up, down, over, and back.
Because we can be drawn back into the contraction and spend too much long there. Too much long there. I'm losing my English.
Speak you will one day. Wow.
We need the contraction for integration.
Yeah.
An embodiment. Yeah. So our relationship with contraction is also distorted, but I gathered that. Yeah.
What? Say that again. What? Say that again. Our relationships are what?
Our relationship with the contraction
is distorted. That was worthy of repeating. Our relationship with the contraction is distorted.
Yeah. And oh man,
we're opening up wormholes here of like conversations that could be but yeah, it's
life is sometimes as volatile as the Bitcoin market.
It sure is.
And we are no way sponsored by any cryptocurrency.
and now we're sponsors.
Yeah, word from our sponsors. Go ahead, Steve. You're the voiceover artist.
Hi, I'm Matt Damon. On crypto.com, you can... Yeah.
Now access our reality wallet. Change your reality with our reality coin.
That's right.
But wait, we just got to put this paid presentation from Niamh. What is it? Crypto for chicks?
Crypto for chicks.
Yeah.
A different lifetime.
Yeah, a different lifetime.
A different lifetime. Yeah. I was telling Steve and Rob before we pressed the record button that in a previous life, in this life, I actually had a business in Australia called Crypto for Chicks.
And Rob corrected me and said, "You mean crypto for chicks?"
So it's just interesting, because that's obviously a whole other conversation, but like what we're seeing with decentralization is it's opening up people's perception of possibility.
Yes.
But before we become curious about the possibility that we can expand into in the realms of the metaverse and technology, wouldn't it make sense that we would first and foremost expand our curiosity about the possibility of our human nature? And to do that first.
Yeah.
And And maybe, without us getting into it, maybe it's a mirror. Maybe this is a mirror for us to see. It's reflecting back to us the infinite potential that's actually within the natural organic being. And
love that.
And that there's a playground within us. There's a universe within us.
And here's a reflection, a mirror for you to see it in this construction that reminds those with the eyes to see that it is merely a dim reflection of the expansiveness we could achieve within our own grounded state.
But isn't the metaverse just a distortion of the organic verse?
Well, yeah, perhaps the best distortion.
The Marvel universe?
The best copy it can manage. And that's what AI and TI will want to seek out. Technical intelligence will want to seek out the best version for its own experience because it's life in itself as well. But I have to say, Niamh, I love the way you can just drop that into the conversation with no fear of the fact that there will be people out there who have, the moment they hear that from that limited mental bandwidth space, go, no, that's wrong. No, we mustn't be able to talk about these things. Oh, Bitcoin, bad. Because there's this idea of a thing that you can identify with, which as a spiritual person means you must be one sort of approach to life. And that's just not expansive at all. You can actually, but you must, I think, find your inner truth and inner self and the grounding in who you are before you, push out into an altered state that isn't grounded within your greater being. But, I'm just talking about balance, really. I don't think one thing is evil or bad, but, to find that you can play in a space is totally okay if you're able to also be within that heart space as well.
But isn't the entirety of life, your human existence, a spiritual experience in it of itself?
I totally
There's
buy
no
that.
separation.
I'm thanks, because that reminds me of one of my core beliefs, which is, some people, I'm kind of getting off topic into another thing, Niamh, but there's a sense that some people feel that spiritualism is this, it's whatever that is, and they forget that actually it's this. It's not necessarily some altered state. It's the state that you are,
Perception shift again.
Yeah. I'm spiritual because I do these teachings, I do these practices, I follow this, but inherently you just are. That's it.
I don't know if you guys, you might not have seen it, but on my website I talk about, we've been attempting to understand our human nature through the realms of science, spiritual, or through, on one side, through the realms of spirituality, religion, and on the other side through science, right? So it's like this dualistic approach to understanding. But I feel like my understanding is that it is the synthesis, is the path to wholeness, is the full integration and the embodiment of all facets, all sides, all dimensions of our human intelligence, but to be able to translate it consciously through the physical body. So it's like basically spiritualization meeting materialization. And there was this one thing I just felt like came through as you were speaking there, Steve, about the whole Bitcoin space, or about navigating, what's right and what's wrong. And, if we get outside, let's just park what's right and what's wrong to one side and come back again to inner mastery, self-mastery. Because if you can cultivate the ability to harness your inner space and your center of power and to be the effective reality and not to be affected by it, then you can master remember how to be in right relation, how to occupy. So be in right relation with that which you are engaging with, but also you can choose whether or not you occupy space within it, how you occupy space, and how do you relate and respond to it. How are you the effect of it within that space, or are you being affected by it? And then you have to understand the laws of contrast and the laws of balance that unfold within those realities, and master your ability to manage that. So this is I know it can sound quite complex, but really it's quite simple, and it all comes back to where you're resourcing your power and coming back. And I know I feel like I'm a broken freaking record on this podcast, but it comes back to inner space again. And that's why, I have been asking again and again internally, how can I contribute at the greatest level right now? And I just strip everything back and the message was to create a space so people can have a direct experience of their potential so they can thrive during this time. And that's probably why I keep bringing it back to that, because liberation is only possible when we have a direct experience of it. And yeah, so even though this conversation I know is going to have, like, it's probably going to, there's going to be many epiphanies, there's many realizations for people, it falls short of what direct experience can facilitate. And I know you guys know that.
Yeah, no, I chuckle at that because I totally feel that too. I fall short in my ability to describe some of the things that I believe at a core. But
we're
level.
having the conversation, and
we're giving it a damn good and we're crack, aren't we?
As the Aussies would say, giving it a nudge.
Giving it a nudge. I've like what I was trying to say earlier too, was, you know, people see themselves as physical beings desperately trying to have a spiritual experience. I try to remind everyone who identifies with all the things they do to be more spiritual that they're actually a spiritual being having a physical experience, and the mastery also occurs on this plane.
Yeah. It's the physical aspect of being human can be so pervasive. We get so caught up in it that we forget who we really are.
Well, Niamh, if you can remember who you really are, could you please give the listeners a signpost on where to find your work and to join in with your community? And we'll finish with that.
Oh, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate that. So if you want to find out more about Inner Space and ORIGEN, you can go to ORIGEN.earth, and that's ORIGEN spelled ORIGEN.earth, and you can find out more there. So thank you so much. This has been such an incredible conversation.
Thank you so much, Niamh. You've been a light. You've been a blessing. You've been so much fun. Yeah, it's been really awesome. So cool.
Thank you as well, guys, because it's rare. It's rare to have a conversation that flows so naturally and so effortlessly. So I appreciate you guys and the work you're doing and your podcast. And here's to more and more listeners. Share this episode.
Yeah.
Share this episode and share all the other episodes. And let's get more of these kind of conversations happening out there.